All right. Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining. I'm going to set my timer really quick for 25 minutes. So that way I know when I'm getting close to the end, because we only have 30 minutes today. I want to start by introducing myself and saying, hi, my name is Jake. I'm a documentary filmmaker, and I've been doing this for over 15 years. I started when I was in high school, and I took a film class, and I knew an organization that was traveling to West Africa with doctors and nurses in the middle of Ivory Coast Civil War, and I asked if I could go and do a documentary about what they were up to. And so I went, and that was my first real documentary. And long story short, I showed it to them, they liked it, and I became their media producer, and I started doing international nonprofit documentary films from a very young age. After that, my resume started to get built up as that kind of guy, and so I got more opportunities to travel around the world and to work with different organizations to tell their story. So all that to say, I've learned a lot over the past 15 years, and I want to take some time today to share some of what I've gathered on my journey, and some of the things that I found work really well, and some of the things that can kind of get in the way of the process of telling an effective story on behalf of the nonprofit. So to get started, I wanted to just, lay a foundation of what exactly it is that we're talking about. We're talking about organizations that don't have any money, right? Like, they have enough money to maybe fly you to wherever they are, to feed you while you're there, and to house you and give you shelter. There's really no budget for renting lenses or, hiring a big crew or getting a passenger van or any of the things that come with a larger budget and a larger sort of marketing initiative. That's not what I'm talking about today. I want to focus on how do we as filmmakers make the best content with the smallest budget and the lightest footprint with what we can essentially carry on our back. How do we make it look like we had 25 people on set? How do we make it look like we had $100,000 to make a 5-minute promotional film or a awareness piece? How do we accomplish that without having that? So that's the foundation that I wanted to set before we, start getting into some of the nuts and bolts of what makes something work and what makes something not work, is establishing these are the parameters under which we're working in. When I get started with nonprofits, the first thing that I need to do is number one, get educated myself about who they are, right? So there's the research component of, before you get going with a nonprofit, you do your own research. Go on their website, read their mission statement, dig into some videos that they might already have, learn about the people that are behind the operation. So that way, when you go into your introductory call that you have with them, you already have a base understanding, so you're not starting from scratch, right? You're not completely in the dark when you begin the dialogue. And so the first thing that I do with an organization is I say, let's set up a time, 2-3 hours. Let's give ourselves an untethered conversation that we can just talk. And it's mostly to figure out what the story is and how we're going to tell their narrative, but it's really an opportunity to become friends, build a relationship, talk about your family, talk about where you live, talk about the things that got you to where you are now, and learn a little bit about them. Why are they passionate about what they do? Things that probably won't end up in the edit, but things that are important for a relationship. Because that's really what it's about, is we're telling the stories of these individuals who are going through life transformative experiences, or they're people that are in charge of organizations that are generating life transforming experiences. And so there's a lot to learn. And I like to set myself up for a big window of time, like I said, 2-3 hours, because oftentimes there's so much to learn about these organizations. It's rare that I get on a call with an organization and they say, yeah, here's our flagship organization, and that's all we do. 9 times out of 10, it's like, so this is our main thing, but we also have a food give back program, and we also have a wellness and fitness program that we work in, and that's all really good information to know. But the most valuable element is, what's the story that we're going to tell with the time that we have with each other, and the time that we have with our audience, which is, in our circumstance, a short window, 5-7 minutes to tell this story. Most organizations could probably warrant an entire feature film made about what they do, right? I did a story in India where it was about this guy who had sold all of his life belongings to start an orphanage for kids. And he was giving them a place to sleep, and he had education under the roof of the orphanage. He fed them, and there was just this beautiful holistic approach to helping these kids be set up for success in their future. But they also they had a widows and elderly program. They had a computer lab. They had an embroidery program. So what I found is that people that run these nonprofits are compassionate people, right? And compassion doesn't know its boundaries. Compassion is just compassion. If you see someone hurting and in need, you're prone to respond to that if you can, right? And that's one of the things that I really love about this work that we get to do. And I say we, meaning I am assuming that you're a filmmaker out there that goes, you know what? I've been given this tool and I want to use it and I want to leverage it for good. I want to do something bigger than myself, something that lasts beyond me, that can create a ripple effect that I can't even imagine or be in control of or command of, but I could set something in motion. I could create a film that could, in theory, generate millions of dollars and change hundreds of thousands of lives. That's the gift of what we're given as filmmakers with this incredible tool of a camera and sound and music and creating this emotional space for an audience to be moved to action. So that's a little off track, but that's kind of where my passion comes out, right? Is that this is what we're doing. We're working on behalf of these compassionate individuals, these nonprofits that are doing such good work. And we get to be sort of their handshake to the rest of the world. Not everybody can show up to a event or a fundraiser or an awareness gathering, but anyone can press play on YouTube or Vimeo and they can learn about what's happening and the good work that's being done in whatever part of the world this organization's operating in. So getting back to the compassionate individual, they might have so many different initiatives that they have going on under their one umbrella of the nonprofit, right? So for me, it's important to whittle it down and say, those are all important and I'm proud of the organization for what they're accomplishing, but we need to get focused on what the story is. So I often go, what's the main thing, right? What's the flagship part of what you guys do? And they'll go, well, it's about, medical attention for people in war zones. It's like, great, okay, got it. So step one is, figuring out what is the main story that we want to tell and being willing to let the other elements sort of be discoveries on the website that people go to after they've watched the film and been inspired. They can learn about all the other facets later on. You don't have to pack everything into this film. It's actually very important not to try and pack everything into the one film. That reminds me, Hemingway said, if I had more time, I would have written you a shorter letter. There's a value in brevity. There's a value in concise thought. And so that's kind of what I'm getting at here. The second thing, while you're on this long form phone call, Zoom call, whatever it might be with the organization, is to have a framework for, okay, how do I put guardrails on this story? Because like I said, these stories can go in a lot of different directions. So it's up to you as the filmmaker to establish these parameters, if you will. So I always think about my films the way that I would think about a fictional film or a non-fiction film, which is a 3-act structure. So my 3-act structure, it's not rocket science, it's not all that interesting, but it is helpful. I think about it as act 1 is what's the problem? What is the issue at hand, right? What are we trying to solve? Act 2 is what are we doing about it? What is our solution, the nonprofit solution, bringing to the table? How are they impacting the problem? And then Act 3 is the future. Where are we going from here? We have the problem, we addressed parts of the problem, but there's still a lot more work to be done, and here's where we're headed from this day forward. And so Act 1 is important because it helps the audience understand what's at stake, right? Oh my God, I didn't realize that so many people lacked access to clean drinking water. That's ridiculous. I can't believe people are drinking water that looks like that, right? Making people aware of the problem. Then Act 2 is like, So we did something about it. We started fundraising and we started building clean water wells, and we began with one community and that grew to 10, or however you want to tell the progression of Act Two, of what the organization's actually doing. What do they stand for? Who are they, right? This is where they really get the organization gets to say, here's why we are, right? And then Act Three being, the work is not done. We have plenty more that we'd like to accomplish. And for a fundraising film, which is what we're talking about, we're here in service of an organization. We're not here necessarily to build up our reel, although it very well should build up your reel. That's not the focus. You're not thinking, okay, how do I shoot this so that way I get a Vimeo staff pick? I'll talk a little bit about that later because I've been through that, and there's some deep learnings there of not giving into the ego of ourselves as the filmmaker. It's important to be in service of the greater good that's at hand. So where do we go from here as an organization? And this allows the audience to go, I want to get behind that. I want to give to them. I want to give my resources, my time, my energy, whatever it might be. It gives the audience something to latch onto and say, here's $500 towards your next water well, whatever it might be. Okay, so now that we've established the framework that you want to have your dialogue within that 3-hour window, you are asking questions. Okay, how do we define the problem, right? And you're hearing from the organization. Okay, so what exactly do you guys do? How do you solve some of those problems that we discussed? Okay, filtering all their answers through Act Two. And then what are you guys hoping to accomplish as we move forward, the filtering all those through Act Three, and then follow the rabbit holes within that conversation. But that's kind of your paradigm of dialogue that you want to have, or that I have when I open up these discussions. So now that we have that framework and we've understood what the organization does, now I find it incredibly important to go, who is gonna be our hero for this story? Because an organization telling what they do and all the progress that they've made and all the money that they've raised, although that might be good and important for the audience to know in some circumstances, I find that the most long-lasting films, the one that make the deepest impact on me, are about people, right? I feel like companies have missions, but people have stories, and people have lived the transformation. So I always like to say, okay, so given the clean water example, who have you worked with that has been impacted most, or that you think has been most impacted by the clean water well now? And 100% of the time, the organization's like, we got this person, that person, this person, that person. And then you start talking about, okay, so who might be the most compelling, right? And let's say the water organization goes, we've got a kid living in a rural community who wants to, he wants to build a rocket ship, right? He wants to be an astrophysicist. I don't know. He's got these grand dreams of being a very prolific member of society. I'm blanking on an interesting profession. Let's say he wants to build a rocket ship. That's kind of fun. So let's say his name's Joel. So they're like, we got this kid Joel, and he wants to be he wants to build rocket ships. He wants to go to space. He wants to beat Richard Branson to the moon. I don't know if Richard Branson already went to the moon or not, or to space. Anyways, I'm off track here. But so, okay, so cool, we've got our story. So now we know where this kid lives. He lives in a little village up in the hills in Haiti, right? So now we have our framework of our 3-act structure, and this is where we get into curating the B-roll that we want to capture. And this is really where I feel like the journey from videographer to filmmaker really begins, right? For the longest time, I was a videographer. I was showing up to what people were doing, and I was just capturing what I thought looked interesting or what I thought was relevant. I was not in charge of deciding, hey, I think this would be really valuable for us to capture to tell our visual story. So that transition from I'm along for the ride to I'm creating a ride that is in sync with the reality that is taking place, right? And so I'll expand on that because that sounds a little ethereal. But for me, you take a story like Joel and you say, here's this kid that used to have to walk, let's say he had to walk an hour and a half to get water every single day. And he would go to this tepid pool of water, and that was their water source. And I've been on these trips, and there are cases where that's the scenario, and it's very disturbing and it's sad, which is why it's so cool to see a clean water well come in, and you get to be a part of sharing that with the world. But anyways, so Joelle used to go to this water source. Okay, so that's clearly Act 1, the problem. People didn't have clean access to drinking water. So instead of saying, yeah, I guess we'll just show up whenever and we'll just, see if Joelle's, not in school and hopefully we can walk and go get our eyes on the water that he used to get. Instead, you say, we're gonna be there on Tuesday, and it would be incredible if we could get to the village before the sun rises, and we could have Joelle walk with the pail that he used to walk with to go get water, and capture that as the sun's rising. And the footage will obviously be a lot more cinematic and compelling, pull the audience in a way that is still authentic to reality. That is the walk that he took. That is the pail that he used. Those are the clothes that he wears. That is the village he lives in. You're just curating what time you're doing it to create the best scenario for your cinema. And so, okay, cool. So we got Joelle walking to get water. He brings it back. We see how dirty it is. You can start thinking about what you need to get in the water with him. Okay, I need boots that go up to my knee because I'm going to be getting in this swampy water. And so, all right, cool. So we got that. Now Act 2, and obviously there's more that you could add into the problem of this. I'm just giving brief examples. Act 2, what's the organization doing? Well, we're building clean water wells all over Haiti. So, all right, we need to capture the team. Let's say the organization is Living Water. All right, we need to get Living Water coming to the village and showcasing them working on a well. So we need to go to a place where a well is being built currently, so we could show that process. All right, cool. We've got one well that's under construction in this part of the country. Great. We'll go there on Wednesday morning, and then we need to show the community where Joelle lives with a finished well, right? So we're kind of capturing spans of time within where we decide to shoot our B-roll. So it looks like we're going from Joelle without water to his water well being constructed to him finally having water. And then we're like, let's make sure we get shots of kids like laughing and playing with the water, even if that's not necessarily how the village treats their water well, with like kids playing in it, because I know a lot of villages are like, this is for drinking, this is not for goofing off, but for the sake of the camera and for the sake of like joy and smiles and making people feel that sense of aliveness that we're trying to convey, maybe it's okay for the kids to have a little bit of fun, right? And the splashing water's getting everywhere, slow motion, beautiful clean water coming out, Joelle's there. Okay, great, so we got the organization being involved. Now let's see if we can get the Living Water team and the village elders together for a meal or something and show that connection. So there's a relationship there. Cool. All right. Now Joelle wants to build rocket ships. Am I right? And so he's got this electronic crazy thing that he's gathered from all over the marketplace, and he's building it in his home, in his town home. And so, all right, well, let's go in there and let's capture some of that and show that this kid's potential will only be realized if he doesn't have to spend 3 hours every day walking to get water. So we show him building his rocket ship, and it's like pew, it's like this little tiny prototype, right? This is a terrible example, but just roll with me. Cool, we got that. Now Act 3, where do we go from here? Well, we want to give clean water to every person without it in Haiti by 2025. Whatever, some audacious goal that the organization has. So, all right, we should probably get Joelle and some of his community members up on like a beautiful Outlook or Vista or something. Maybe we can even have them, have some sort of celebration, right? If there are a lot of villages that I've been to, when water comes, there's a massive celebration. So maybe it's like, hey, can we maybe have something similar to that while I'm there for filming? And another interesting thing is that when you ask for things for the camera, for the filmmaking process, people love it. The people in the community love it. They're like, this is fun. Like, we're making a thing. Show people your footage, right? The Steadicam slow motion footage that you show to people, it's like, gets them on board. They're like, whoa, that looks cool. That camera is so good. It's like, well, the operator's also doing some work here. But so anyways, so all right, we get them looking out over the horizon, and it's really inspiring, and that's great footage for Act 3. that's a short, truncated version that we could talk in much greater depth on about how to fill the 3-act structure. So now that you have your B-roll, you've also done yourself a favor by kind of building a schedule a little bit. So that way people know, like, okay, we need a van on this day to take us to this location. The organization will appreciate this, because it's not just like, hey, tell me where to go. I'm your videographer. I made it. I got through customs. The organization will be very thankful that you have a vision and that you're like, I think that this would be really powerful to do this, that, and the other thing. And they go, great, we can definitely curate that. Because remember, you're the filmmaker, you're the storyteller. So it's not up to the organization, although they probably will have ideas about compelling narratives. It's up to you to say, this is how and when I think we should craft it. You know, going back to this whole idea of the journey from videographer to filmmaker, a lot of that has to do with the willingness to take charge a little bit and say, we're making a film here, right? We are true to life. We're not asking Joel to act like he's, you know, some parkour athlete or something, where it's like, or we're not asking them in the middle of Haiti to like have a sushi feast. It's like we're still relevant to the culture that we're in, and it's still authentic to the individuals on screen and the organization at hand. But you're taking some liberties in terms of, it will look better if when we're shooting the celebration, if we're over there, than if we're right here under the really dead, you know, noon sun shadow vibes. If we could just go and get under the shade, or if we can go over to that grassy area or whatever it is, your instinct knows what's visually going to be more appealing. If we could just wait until the end of the day, all of this will look a lot better. And most of the time, organization will be like, okay, great, yeah, we'll just schedule it for the end of the day. And so that's a bit about how to kind of curate your B-roll. So now that we've talked a little bit about, you know, your structure and the story and how to capture the visual story of the organization through an individual's eyes, let's talk a little bit about what I bring with me in my backpack. What's actually going with me? Because I'm saying this is a very small footprint. I go by myself most times. It would be nice to have an assistant, but what I'm talking about is the one-man band paradigm. Now, I know when I say that is probably a very triggering phrase to a lot of filmmakers listening, because the one-man band is how you start out because you have no other option. And I know for me, when I started, I always thought, well, once I reach a certain level of success, I won't be a one-man band. I'll have a huge crew. I'll have a DP, AC, I'll have a whole grip and electric crew. I'll have my producers, I'll have the trucks, I'll have everything at my disposal. And those are great, and those are really fun to play with. And I did go on that journey, and I did end up in the commercial world where I was in charge of 30, 40 people on set, and I was proud of what we made. And there is a level of excellence that you can achieve as a unit that you simply can't achieve alone. But as we're discussing in this world of nonprofit storytelling and social good storytelling, we're assuming that the budgets are small, and we're assuming that you are the one-man band or the one-woman band, the one-person band. And a funny story is so let me back up. I have found that my films that I made as an individual have gotten me more commercial work than my commercial work has gotten me commercial work. So what I'm saying is that there's no shame in the one-man band, there's just story. There's only how powerful the narrative is that you bring to the table that people latch onto. People feel when they watch things. And if you make them feel something significant, if you did it alone or if you did it with 150 people, it doesn't matter. They just want to be taken on an emotional ride that makes them feel inspired, makes them feel more connected to other people, and makes them feel like a more compassionate individual. And that's what we're really up to. The little anecdote I wanted to share was like 3 months ago, I was on a Pepsi commercial, but it was a small shoot. I was the DP and the director and the producer. So it was like very run and gun. We're at multiple locations. We get to the first location, and the manager of the restaurant that we were shooting at called me video boy. And he meant well, I think, but he just video boy. I used to take great offense to something like that, like back in the, you know, you're shooting birthday parties or you're shooting, you know, weddings are fair game because there's good money in that. But you know, people calling you their videographer, but video boy cracked me up. You know, I told a client one time, I said, if you refer to me as your director, not your videographer, it'll make you sound more legitimate. You're bringing your director to set. Oh, the timer's up. We only have 5 more minutes. Okay. In my bag, I have a nimble camera, Sony the FX3 is what I'm shooting on now, their newest line of compact cinema camera. I shoot on prime lenses. I go anywhere between a 35 prime and a 50, which if you don't know what a prime lens is, it's not a zoom lens. They're faster, which means they have greater depth of field, which creates a more cinematic look. Now, in order to stay wide open, I put a variable ND on the front of my camera. So this is a very small, compact rig that I'm talking about. For audio, shotgun microphone, and a lavalier for my interviews. And that all fits in my camera backpack. So that's the camera rig. Then I've got my gimbal, which is my Ronin S. I love using the gimbal at high speeds to create a heightened sense of reality, right? So shooting 60 frames per second of a character intro where I'm pushing in on them to reveal them to the audience, right? Let's say Joel's standing in his doorway in his village, and he just slowly looks up into the camera, right? You can create a sense of awe and wonder for the audience using something like a Steadicam or like a 360 around them, Michael Bay style, while they're looking up at the skyline. It's very inspiring. It makes you think, wow, they're dreaming big, right? So that's a tool that I like that kind of heightens my creative sensibilities. And then I also have my drone, the Mavic Air. And this all fits within a tiny little backpack that I can check onto an airplane. So I don't have to worry about, did it make it through customs? Is it gonna be all right? I have what I need. Anything else I can replace. So that's the nuts and bolts. Now that's the basics. That's what I take with me on everything. I want to give you 2 other elements that I think are really valuable that don't necessarily fall into the basics. One is a hazer. If you look it up on Amazon, it's typically marketed towards DJs. A hazer basically creates atmosphere. It's particles in the air that make light streak. And it's just, it's a tool that's used in cinema all the time. I started implementing it in some of my docu-pieces, and it's been a game-changing separating factor where people go, wow, that's leveled up a little bit. So there's the hazer, if you can bring it somehow. You could probably check it in a bag, or if you're driving, you can just put it in your trunk. And then also I use these 10-inch LED tubes. And those are great because I could stick them anywhere. I could add light if I need it. I could turn all the lights off in the house and I could just craft the light myself. And they're incredibly light and nimble, which is the basis of what we're talking about, right? Being light, being nimble, and being cinematic. So those are the basic tools of what I use. And before our time runs out, before our 30 minutes is up, I wanted to give you one last tool that doesn't fit in a backpack, and I call it the most valuable lens. And that most valuable lens isn't a lens at all, but it's your perspective. And it's something that I've had to try and hone over the last 17 years of making documentaries, is that, you know, in your everyday life when you're not filming, train your brain to be aware of the little beautiful things that are happening all around you. And what I mean by that is look at the way that the shadow is falling on the floor from the tree coming through your window. See how it dances and see how it kind of creates a sense of space, or the way that the wind blows through the window and moves the curtain on the windowsill. Or the way that, you know, for me, I have a 5-month-old son, the way that his feet look as he's, you know, trying to stand and walking through grass and experiencing water for the first time, or a river for the first time. And just the little moments that make you go, oh, here I am. This is the space I'm in. If you train your brain to do that outside of filmmaking, then when you're jet lagged and tired and you're in international waters and people are like, okay, what's next? What do we do next? You've trained your brain to see those things, and you'll capture them more organically, and it'll be a knee-jerk reaction. You know, with lucid dreaming, they say if you want to learn how to lucid dream, which is sort of being aware that you're dreaming while you're dreaming and controlling it, they're like, if you want to harness that, you need to train your brain in your waking state to ask pivotal questions that you repeat over and over again, so that way when you're dreaming, those repetitive questions from your waking state emerge, and it triggers an awareness of your sleeping state. And so that's how you lucid dream. And I'm kind of getting to a similar idea. Training your brain without your camera in your hand to see the beauty all around you. That way when it is, you can press record, you can capture it, and it has the likelihood to take your film from good to really great. So that's unfortunately all the time that we have together. Thank you guys for hanging out, listening. I'll just leave you with a final thought. We have been given this incredible tool, filmmaking and storytelling, and it's something that we can use and leverage to make the world, frankly, a better place. I know that that's a big statement, and I personally don't like throwing out things like, we can change the world. That's a hard task. That doesn't happen by making one video. It happens by doing everything in our individual power, in our different pockets of the world, to do a little bit, to shed light on the world that is making us more compassionate, making us more whole, making us more loving. And if we can use this gift of filmmaking to accomplish that goal, we're doing something special. So have fun, go out there, find an organization that you're inspired by, go make something powerful. I can't wait to see it. And yeah, let's carry on. Thanks for your time, guys.